Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to fundamentally shift how you think about artificial intelligence. If you've been treating generative AI like a magic search engine, or maybe getting super frustrated when it just suddenly fails at a seemingly simple task, well, you are exactly in the right place. We're going to move away from this idea of AI as magic and start looking at how to actually work with it as a true collaborative partner. We're going to unpack this brilliant concept called the AI mirror, looking at how our human competencies directly correspond to the machine's mechanics.
So let me ask you this right off the bat. Are you treating AI like magic or like an actual partner? I want you to really think about that, because true collaboration requires understanding both what you bring to the table and what constraints the machine is actually operating under. Look, if you think it's magic, you're going to inherently trust it way too much when it's wrong, and probably trust it too little when it's actually highly capable. We need calibrated trust, right? We have to understand its actual character.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll define AI fluency, examine the human 4Ds framework, and look at the 4 core machine properties. Then, we'll reveal the human-machine mirror, diagnose some common failures, and finish up with your fluency plan.
Okay, Section 1. Welcome to AI fluency, moving from magic to mastery.
So what exactly is AI fluency? Well, it's about working with AI effectively, efficiently, ethically, and safely. But here's the crucial part. Fluency isn't just some technical skill, like learning how to code. It's actually a set of human habits. And these habits apply across 3 distinct ways of working. First, there's automation. That's where you give the AI a specific task to just knock out. Second is augmentation, where you and the AI collaborate, going back and forth as thinking partners. And third is agency, where you set up an AI to work a bit more independently on your behalf. But whether you're doing simple automation or complex agency, your foundational habits are going to remain exactly the same. Moving on to Section 2, the human side, the 4Ds. This is your framework for AI collaboration.
All right, let's talk about the 4Ds: delegation, description, discernment, and diligence. Together, these form a continuous feedback loop of human responsibility. It starts with delegation, basically deciding what to do yourself versus what to hand off to the AI. This means knowing your own goals, but also knowing what the platform can actually handle. The goal isn't just to automate everything, it's to build an effective partnership. Next up is description. Look, AI cannot read your mind. You have to clearly describe the product you want, the process you want it to follow, and the performance, like the tone, you expect. Then we have discernment. When the AI hands work back to you, you can't just glance at the final product. You have to evaluate whether its reasoning was actually sound. It's a cycle: describe, evaluate, refine, and describe again. And finally, diligence. This is all about ownership. You verify the work, you're transparent about using AI, and you deploy that final result as if you created the whole thing entirely yourself. Ultimately, the output is your responsibility.
Section 3, the machine side. Time to look under the hood of generative AI. So the very first property we need to understand is next token prediction. Generative AI writes its answers word by word based on learned patterns. It's honestly much closer to a vastly sophisticated autocomplete than to a traditional search engine. And this single mechanism is responsible for both its incredible fluency and its annoying tendency to hallucinate. In its capability zone, it is absolutely amazing at summarizing things and traveling well-worn paths. But in its limitation zone, which is sparse, novel territory, it really struggles. Because it's just predicting the next likely word, it has a really hard time distinguishing between what is actually true and what just sounds true. This is exactly why specific claims, exact quotes, and citations absolutely need your verification.
Property number 2 is knowledge. Now, what a model actually knows comes entirely from its training data, and that data is frozen at a specific cutoff date. This means it totally thrives on mainstream, frequent topics that were heavily represented in its training. But step outside of that, it struggles with niche facts, recent events that happen post-cutoff, and it suffers from what we call source amnesia. The AI literally cannot cite where a piece of knowledge came from, it just knows the pattern.
Then we have our third property, working memory. And this one is fascinating because it's a cliff, not a gradient. Everything the AI is paying attention to lives inside a fixed-size context window. If your material fits comfortably and you're in a fresh session, boom, you're in the capability zone. But if you expect it to remember incredibly long documents, or you want continuity across totally separate sessions, you're going to hit the limitation zone hard. It will just silently forget anything outside of that window. And no, it doesn't learn from your corrections permanently. Those corrections only exist right there in the current context window. The fourth and final property is steerability. Because AI is fundamentally following patterns, it is incredibly steerable. It will follow your short, concrete formats and explicit roles perfectly. That's the capability zone. But when things get complex, we wander back into the limitation zone. In long, abstract reasoning tasks, it can suffer from reasoning drift, where tiny little errors compound over a long chain of thought. Or it might give you letter-over-spirit compliance. That's when it follows your instructions incredibly literally, but totally misses your actual intent.
Section 4. The Human-Machine Mirror. Two halves of one system. This is where it all clicks together. The human side and the machine side. They aren't separate things. They are literally two halves of the exact same system. It's a mirror. Your human discernment directly mitigates the risks of its next token prediction, because you know it's just predicting words, you know you have to verify specific claims and logic. Your delegation respects the AI's knowledge limits. You know its knowledge is frozen, so you delegate appropriately and supply the missing facts yourself. And your description actively manages its working memory and steerability. Because you understand that fixed context window and its literal nature, you know to front-load your context and clearly state your actual goals, not just your formatting requests. It's a perfect pairing.
Let's apply this. Section 5. When properties collide, diagnosing real-world failures.
You know when AI just breaks down or gives you a totally frustrating answer? It's usually because two of these machine properties are colliding at the same time. For example, let's say the AI gives you a beautifully written, highly confident citation for a book that simply does not exist. No way, right? What happened? That is next token prediction desperately trying its best to fill in knowledge gap. The AI doesn't have the factual knowledge, so the autocomplete engine just invents a pattern that sounds exactly like a real book. When you see those hallucinated specifics, you need to apply your discernment to verify them directly rather than just trusting the confident tone.
Or, how about this scenario? You're deep into a super long conversation, and the AI suddenly just starts ignoring the constraints you set an hour ago? That is working memory and steerability failing together. The context window is getting totally full, so the working memory drops your original instructions, and because steerability relies on that context, it just drifts away from your goal. The fix here isn't to yell at the AI in all caps. You need to use your description competency to resupply the context, or honestly, better yet, just start a fresh session.
Section 6. Your AI Fluency Plan. Putting the frameworks into practice.
Okay, so how do we actually do this every day? To effectively manage the machine's steerability and working memory, you've got to rely on these 6 prompting techniques as your daily toolkit. First, always give explicit context. Tell the AI exactly what you want and why it matters. Second, show examples of the desired output style. Remember, AI learns incredibly well from patterns. Third, lock in your exact constraints like format and length. Fourth, if you're dealing with a complex task, break it down into simple steps to prevent that reasoning drift we talked about. Fifth, ask the AI to think out loud before it gives you the final answer. Having its reasoning visible helps you catch errors early. And finally, define a specific role or tone to perfectly anchor its performance.
Now, I want to share a massive pro tip with you. This is probably one of the most underused tools in your entire Fluency toolkit. Explicitly ask the AI to review and improve your prompt before you actually run it. Seriously, you can literally type, "Here is my goal," and "Here is my draft prompt." Before you answer, please suggest ways to improve this prompt so I get a better result. It is an absolute game changer for mastering your description competency. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I leave you with this. What task are you going to delegate to AI today? Remember the mirror. Counter its next token prediction with your discernment. Support its frozen knowledge with careful delegation. And manage its working memory and steerability through precise description and diligent ownership. Stop treating it like magic. Step up to the mirror and start building a real partnership. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll catch you next time.